Welcome. My name is Allison Field, and I want to welcome you to our YouTube channel, Create Your Blank, where we share stories of fascinating people who have created their blank. We share how they got started, what inspired them, and their journey of creating where they are today. Today, we have Adrian Landin with us in the studio, and super excited to share him with you and what he's doing out in the world today. So welcome, Adrian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I feel honored to be here.
Yay. So everybody is, watching the video is familiar maybe with Create Your Blank, and it's my book, Create Your Blank. And so for those who don't know, I love to interview people who have actually created their blank. So Adrian, share with us where you are today in the world and what you are up to as your blank.
Yeah, so I am currently sat in my apartment in Dallas, Texas. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. And I'm here now after spending the last 7.5 months in Thailand, Cambodia, and Nepal. And I came back home to take care of a few things, but I've spent the majority of the last 20 either traveling the world or working while out traveling the world in order to save money to continue to travel the world. I've been shoestring traveling the vast majority of time since I graduated from college, which was way back in the Flintstone era of 1999.
Okay, cool. So I want to dig in deep there because you came back recently from the 3-month trip. Was it 3 or 5? 3 months trip.
7.
7. Okay, so Cambodia, Thailand, and
Nepal.
Nepal was amazing. I've been following you on Substack and your stories. And I love you, and I love your energy, and I love what you do out in the world, being who you are, traveling as you are. And that's not easy, right? Well, it may be for you, but I mean, for some of us, that is not something that we aspire to necessarily. But you do. So what is it that is motivating, you think is your prime motivation for traveling as you do?
Prime motivation is I've never been able to duplicate the way I feel, the aliveness I feel here in the States as while I'm out in the world. And when I first left home, it was because I graduated from college and the expectation was to fall in line with the American dream or the American playbook. And I knew, and I don't know how I knew, but I knew at an early age that was not the life for me. Fortunately enough, my old man was a mischievous young man, and he got arrested a handful of times when he was a teenager. And the last time they told him, you want to go to the big house or you want to go to the army? And he chose the army. And he spent 4 years in Darmstadt, Germany as a soldier, and it completely changed his life. Well, fast forward however many years until I was about to graduate college, and I met a friend of mine who was a professional male model, and he, along with doing runway shows in Western Europe, after he would finish work, he would get a backpack, hop in a train, and just travel all over Europe. And I ran into him one evening, and we went back to his place and went into his kitchen, and I grabbed a beer out of the fridge, and on the freezer, he had about 15 from all different places in Western Europe. I went back into the living room and I said, hey, what's up with the postcards? And he said, go grab them. So I went and grabbed them, and they were from women that he had been romantic with while he was traveling. But that moment changed the trajectory of my life forever, because I saw those photos, I imagined those relationships, and I knew I wanted to do it, and I had no idea how. And so I asked him, I said, dude, do you think I could do that? And he grabbed a big yellow tab, like 5 times bigger than this one that I have here at my desk. And he created a different kind of playbook for me. And he wrote down what book to buy. At that point, there was no cell phones or smartphones, or email had just broke. And so, I followed his playbook. I left home with a book and a backpack, and rest is history. Yeah, it changed everything for me.
Wow. What was the book? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was called Let's Go Europe 99. It was the year 1999's edition. Now, from that point, I think a couple of years later is when Lonely Planet really hit.
Yeah.
And now everything's Lonely Planet. Well, now everything's cell phone. Back in the day, I would just rip pages out of that big ass book and fold them up and keep them in my
Uh-huh.
pocket. And that's how I got around. Those are the maps that I followed.
Wow. Wow. That's so cool. I remember when I was 16, me and my two sisters and my little brother went backpacking around Europe for 30 days with $300 in our pocket. And we did Europe on $10 a day. It was Arthur Frommer's book, Europe on $10 a day. And literally, we followed every guide of every city that we entered. We did the Eurail Pass. And every city we'd go to, we'd tear out the pages. We'd have them all highlighted of where to go, where to eat, where to stay, where we could do it within our budget. So the books are valuable, but thank God they're all online now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So that kind of started your journey.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
I spent 3.5 months traveling the first time there, maxed out a credit card or two, went back home, and all I could think about was how do I pay off this debt and how do I go do it again? And then I did it again for 3 more months. I came back home, then I saved for 2 years, and then I left and I didn't come home for a while. Then I started to figure out I could strategically make money while I was traveling and not have to go back home. And that sort of morphed into me living outside of America more than I was back home.
So that's something. That takes something. It takes something, emotionally, mentally, physically for most of us. And for you, it has seemed easy and easeful. But what do you think is the most challenging thing about the way you do life now?
No, it's different than it was when I was in my 30s, when it, starting to get to the age where there's this expectation of, okay, dude, you've been doing this for a while. You've seen the world. There's familial and societal expectations, especially coming from where I come from. My dad was Mexican and, started off selling insurance, going door to door, and he never pressured me. One thing that I feel very lucky, Allison, is even though those familial expectations are sort of built into our DNA, I never had a family member, my mom, my dad, or my sister sort of wag their finger at me and saying, "Dude, what are you doing?" I had their support, never financially, but always knew that if I needed something, in fact, my dad came to visit me twice. My sister's come to visit me once. My mom was supposed to come visit me in Thailand 10 years ago, and she fell a couple of days and split her knee into two pieces. So she wasn't able to come see me. But I think the most challenging part for pockets of, and I'll be honest with you, there have been points where I've also looked at myself in the mirror and say, what are you doing? Like, I don't have a home. I don't have a family of my own. I don't have a big 401k. I don't have savings. I've been living for right now. And that decision was never difficult for me because something always gave me the foresight to understand that I don't want to live with regret. And like I said, once that spark was lit inside of me, I knew I didn't want to stop doing it until that spark was no longer there. And it hasn't gone away. Things have changed. The world's changed. Smartphones have changed everything. How people travel. Google Translate is it's a game changer. So the opportunities are different now. I'm older now. There are things that I appreciate more now or don't look for in the same way. But the beauty in human connection and the aliveness that I feel when I'm in these developing countries is something that I'm committed to.
Yeah. Yeah, human connection is key. So that brings me to mind, in my book, I talk about values and how important it is to honor your values. And we go through an exercise of that and discovering what your values are. So, excuse me. And I think if we don't, that's the key for me in my life has been, if we don't honor our values and what's really, truly important to us, we're ultimately not going to be satisfied or happy or fulfilled or anything. But there is a level of commitment that has to be existent with it, that are we really committed to doing the thing? Are we really committed to, you traveling the world and that human connection that is so important to you that you mentioned? So if you think about your values, what do you think are your top, say, 3 values that have sort of guided you along your path and your way of doing blank your way?
Wow. This sort of digs into a lot of personal development work that I've done. And what I've really been able to unspool and unravel is how important consideration is for me, and the value
Mm.
of compassion and the value of acknowledgement. Seeing somebody and being seen are two of the most beautiful things that we can do as human beings. And I think, look, I needed nothing as a child. We had everything, but there was still a lack of presence that stayed with me. And my desire, my wholehearted desire in seeing people has given me such a gift while I'm traveling. And
Mm.
to see these people that work so hard every day just so that they or their families can eat that day or the next day, and to have these little micro connections that have turned into friendships for me, yeah, that makes me feel really rich.
I'm so moved by that. That's so beautiful. Just to,
Thank you.
just to be fully present with others and develop those
Yeah,
relationships.
and to get, it was, I think, I don't know if I came out of the womb that way or if it was a lack of things that I as a young Adrian needed, but for whatever the reason, my jam and a gift that I have is acknowledging people and seeing people. And I'm a sensitive human being. I'm an alpha male through and through, but I'm so hypersensitive to light, to energy, to sounds. But part of that is my ability to soak in what's going on around me. And if I feel like someone's in need, even if it's just a glance or a handshake or a fist bump or a hug, I've been known.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's beautiful. And your stories share that. Your stories share that connection that you exude with others and experience with others. So I'd like for you to share. I know that maybe it was about a year ago or so, you sort of went through this transition on your 7-month journey and sort of discovered this new thing that you were going to be doing. You want to share a little bit about what that is, and so people will know a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Sure. I've transitioned the vast majority of my energy and my writing and my storytelling and my photography, my street photography over from Facebook to Substack. And Substack is an app. I think it's, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 years old. I just joined it 5 months ago, and it was created for writers. And I've often hesitated calling myself a writer because I have no formal training, but I am one savage storyteller. And so over the years of sharing my stories on Facebook, I've had multiple people, ask me or urge me or inquire if I'm going to write a book, because my life is a little bit different by American standards. And being a storyteller, I have, a treasure chest full of stories and situations and experiences and adventures and other people's shared experiences that I love telling the world, especially Americans. I think we're in a time now where more than ever, I want to inspire curiosity and human compassion. And
Yes.
so I've been writing over on Substack, and yeah, that's where I'm now housing all of my creative endeavors.
That's wonderful. And I invite everybody to take a look at your Substack and subscribe if you're so moved to do that, because it is, to me, so inspirational that you do life this way. I don't know anybody else who does life this way. And I find it fascinating. I find it a little bit Ernest Hemingway-ish, if you will, or some other magical writers that exist out there. And they have to take the road, they take the high road, and that's where they feel and experience and the magic of the world. And so you're doing it. Your legacy is this, right? And is sharing your journeys and your experiences with the world.
Yeah. It's really allowed me to embrace that I now full-fledged have purpose. And my passion for 20 years has been to travel and meet people from different cultures and countries and try and understand how life occurs outside of this small little bubble that I grew up in. And I'll tell you, I'd like to share this. I was hoping you would I was doing dishes earlier, and I thought, if there's one thing that she asks me, I was having a conversation. It was September 17th, 2 years ago, and I was in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and I was at a bar. A girlfriend of mine that I met there, a little French girl, owned a bar in the heart of Phnom Penh, and it was my dad's birthday and also my dad's passiversary. He died on his 70th birthday. So I was at the bar by myself. The girlfriend of mine who owned it was busy, and some Australian guy came and sat right next to me. And I said, "Hey, can you cheers me real quick, man? I'm about to drink my first sip of this beer, and today's my dad's birthday, and also the day he passed away eight years ago. And he was like, yeah, mate, sure. We cheers, and he pulled out a little bag of pot and started rolling a doobie and asked me if I wanted to smoke. And I said, man, I'm used to be a smoker. I'm not a smoker anymore. And he said, well, my dad's really sick in Australia, so I was wondering if you take a toke of this for him. I said, okay,
Oh,
sure. How could I say no, right?
right,
Took a little
right.
toke. We started talking, having a back and forth, and he's asking me, what do you do? What's your purpose? And I hadn't
Mm,
started like the Substack journey, but I knew that I wanted to inspire curiosity and compassion within my home country, within young
mhm.
Americans. So I told him a little bit about all my travels, and I had spent time in his city. He's from Brisbane in Australia, and I'd been there. And finally he says to me, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah, sure. Excuse my French here, but I'll mute it out. But he said, why in the do you care if Timmy from Texas travels? Why do you care? Why is that important for you?
Good
And it
question.
stumped me. It stumped me. It
Mm,
actually enraged me because I didn't have an answer ready for him. And I said, you know what? Let me
mm,
get back to you. So for 48 hours after we left that bar, I stewed and I stewed and I stewed. I had conversations with Ashley and a mentor and like trying to figure out. And then I went back 48 hours later, 2 nights later, and he wasn't there, but I had the answer in my brain.
mm,
And here's the answer. And I think this will speak to the purpose of why you're doing this, create your blank. Of course I care if Timmy from Texas travels, but what I care more than that is who I get to be when I'm telling Timmy from Texas why to travel. How I get to
mm,
show up and explain that I did something that I wanted to do out of my heart, out of my own desire. I created this life that seemed so irresponsible,
mhm.
spontaneous, courageous, things that we don't necessarily do. And I'm not patting myself on the back because I will tell you this hasn't been all rainbows and butterflies. I've questioned my lifestyle plenty, but I know deep in my heart, if I live 10 more years or 20 more years or 30 more years, I will be on my deathbed and I won't have any regrets about what I didn't do. And so to be able to show up in people's lives that way, in the way that I am able to, I can feel myself, the way that I'm able to be when I talk about my travels, that's why I want to inspire people.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
that's how I know when I'm talking about my travels, people are wide eyed.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
I hope
And
that
yes, no, that's perfect. And that was, as I was thinking about, always pre-think about the interview and feel into it. And I was always curious about your why. And that's your why. That question that he asked you and that you stewed over for 48 hours, brought you to the place where you connected with your true why. And that to me is why I wrote the book. That's to me why we do these interviews. And so, in that same vein, what would you say to any young person who is watching this, or any person, doesn't matter young or old, and you want to convey the why in a way that inspires them? What would you say to them so that they could get started on their path?
I don't think I'll make any secret about it. The most important thing in my life, the most valuable education I've ever been given, and I graduated from college. I haven't used my college degree once, Allison,
Not
is to
surprised.
travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, is to travel. And because it's not just traveling, but it forces you to see things and be ways I couldn't be and I
Mhm.
wouldn't be who I am today had I not traveled. I've
Mhm.
been around the
Mhm.
world many times by myself. I've been in
Mhm.
situations and predicaments and
Mhm.
losses and wins, and you really get to find out things about yourself that it's difficult to achieve otherwise. So my advice wouldn't be to travel so you can see the world. My advice would be to travel so that you can find yourself, find things out about yourself that you might not even know exist. I had
Yes.
no idea I had the ability to travel in the way that I do. And I have this gift with languages. I don't speak a lot of languages, but I speak a little bit of a lot of different languages because I've got an ear
Mhm.
for it. My second piece of advice, if I can throw this in there, if you do decide to travel, is to learn a little bit of the language wherever you are going. Not to be able to communicate, but to see the reaction from the local people and how they then will bend over backwards or will show you things or will want to connect with you in ways that if you just go there and expect everyone to speak English.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful recommendation. And I found that too in my travels is if you just do a little bit, then the doors open wide open for you to experience more. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so many Americans don't travel because their number one fear, well, the number one reason would be fear. And one of the number one fears would be language barrier. But my experience, a language barrier is actually a gift, because if you don't speak the language, then you're going to find yourself in certain situations that you wouldn't find yourself in had you spoken the language. I can't tell you how many times where I haven't spoken the language and tried my best to connect with a local and then end up on their floor at their house drinking tea or eating dinner with them, even though we don't speak the language. It's this, there's the universal language of energy and eye contact. Like there's just a trust that becomes available, and you really get to understand that we're all the same.
Yeah, we are. And that's so beautiful. I remember you wrote recently about, hold on, I had 3 thoughts in my head at once, and I'm going to try to get back to the one. So you wrote about hiring this guy. Yes, it was Cambodia, I believe. You hired the guy to take you where no gringos existed. You didn't want to see any white people. So he took you on this big journey, right? This magical journey for the day. And I love that. You don't do the traditional at all. You go to where the natives are and where you can fully experience their life and their culture, right?
Yeah. And that story is just a microcosm of my travels. I'd be lying if I said I don't sometimes hang out where there are gringos, because where there are gringos, there is good American breakfast. And no matter how long I've been away from home, I always want to have good American breakfast.
Yeah, but you got to have that bacon and eggs.
Within that story, I talked about the kids that came up to us, the street kids they were afraid of me. They didn't want to get too close to me because they don't see barang as the Cambodian word for gringo. They don't see barang. So they didn't know my friend who was with me, but they were immediately by his side. They felt safe by him, with him. By the end of that, we were feeding them the food that we bought for ourselves. And he was pleading with them, please, I know it's not easy. You read the story. I pulled out my phone and I couldn't understand what they were saying because they were speaking Khmer in the local language. But 2 days later, I showed a girlfriend and I said, hey, tell me what he's saying to these kids. And she said, Long, this is a good human being. This is a good Cambodian man, was her exact words. He is telling them, no matter how hard it might be for you, please try and go to school, or else you're going to end up like me, driving around guys like him for $4, $5. And to be in that energy and feel it, even though I didn't know what was going on, and then to have the knowledge of it later, it's like my respect for porn, is my friend's name, just went through the roof. Later in that story I explained, we just, you were a large part of that, paid for a year for his daughter to go to school.
Yeah.
And thank you from the bottom of my heart, Allison.
You're welcome. I love the opportunity to support. Don't make me cry again. I get so touched by all of it. Let me take a sip. So
it's all good.
What do you think is the biggest, this is a big question, but what do you think is the biggest thing that you've learned that you hold in your heart that you will always have available for you, no matter where you go?
Wow. So from the time I was knee high, I told you my dad he's Mexican, and grew up in Dallas, but grew up being called greaser and wetback and spick and all these things. And he had a hard upbringing, and he had some things happen to him as a young man that completely shattered his ability to trust anyone. So from the time I was able to understand language, one thing he always preached to my sister and I is, don't trust anyone. And I can remember Allison being waist high and him saying these things, and he was my hero. So of course I'm going to listen and soak in and take in what he says, but it didn't feel right to me. I could hear his words and I saw his actions. I know he didn't trust anybody, but that didn't feel right to me. When I started to travel, I really unwrap how my inner knowing of trusting people. Have I been burned? Plenty. Yes. But have I been gifted so many beautiful interactions and relationships and friendships and connections because I've trusted people? And like I said a minute ago, America is based on fear. We're so afraid of the outside world. And what I can tell you is, not everybody hates Americans. Not everyone's thinking about Americans. Not everyone's wanting to be here. We have such an arrogant mentality and such an ignorant mentality. And I know that sounds harsh, but ignorance is just the definition of not knowing. And if you don't leave a certain place, you're not going to know any difference.
That's right.
So not only did I get opened up to all of these new languages and money and food and women and opportunities to hang out with different guys from all over the world, but I really got to trust other human beings for the first time in my life. And then I got to trust myself, knowing that that was what my own reality.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's beautiful. And I think it's probably your trusting yourself is the biggest, being able to navigate anything, really, anything that's put in front of you. I remember your Nepal stories. Oh my gosh. That whole scenario around that journey, that visit was a big deal. And trusting that you've got your back. The world has your back. The spirits, whatever it is, has your back. And that people that you can trust and that you can lean in and sort of envelope yourself within that beauty of others, right?
I can't tell you how many people, not only from my own personal experience, but to see other people that I've met that are new to traveling, and then I'll run into them later on, or we'll have a conversation later on, and they're transformed into these human, compassionate, like trusting and loving. Travel changes you. And I know it's a privilege. I know it's not easy. I've never had a lot of money. I've made the sacrifices because I was dedicated to the commitment of continue to keep going. But I'm here to tell you, no matter who's watching this, I'm not talking about going to Cancun or to the Bahamas. My biggest invitation for people is to go somewhere by themselves. Even if you're female, there are plenty of places you can go in this world as a female by yourself. If you have any fear about that, you can reach out to our friend Robin Finney, who's been traveling the world.
I was just thinking of her.
Yeah, and she is the quintessential white American single target. She would be a perfect target for something to happen to, and she's done nothing but build a beautiful life for herself on the road. Yeah, I think I can't. It's hard for me to put into words what you're able to learn about yourself, and then the value of wanting to know about other places. Less than 50% of our people, of Americans, have a passport. You know what that's saying? We're so arrogant. We don't think we need to leave this country.
Yeah.
We're reading one chapter of a book.
Yeah, a little bitty chapter too, babe, right?
And if you knew the reality of what happened in that one chapter from other people's perspectives, from other countries' perspectives, from other governments' perspectives, you'd have a completely different view of your home country. I promise you that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the last question is, what question would you want me to ask that hasn't been asked yet that you want to share and answer?
Wow. I think the why, and I kind of touched on that with Timmy from Texas, but I don't think I can emphasize enough how important it is for people to give themselves the opportunity, just the opportunity, to have curiosity or inspiration around what turns me on. Because I've been willing to forfeit the American dream, the picket fence, and the K and the retirement and all that stuff because I was committed to what made me feel the most alive.
Yes.
And do you know what that is for yourself? Because if I hadn't traveled, I may have never known. I may have just followed the playbook and been able to retire at 60 or whatever with all the money in the world, but never have known, not all the money in the world, but you know what I mean? Never have known this version of myself. I can't imagine not knowing version of myself.
Yes. And isn't that what life is all about? Is discovering the best version of ourselves and experiencing all that we need to or want to experience to have that be real for ourselves and our lives, and go out in the world and be that. And that's beautiful. To me, that's what life is all about, is creating your blank. And that's what you've done. And it's so beautiful. And I want to thank you for sharing your story with us today. That is a wrap. We could go on for hours, I do believe. And so if people want to reach out to you, how do they connect?
Yeah, so it's my first and last name, Adrian Landin, on Substack, which is an app that you can download, or if you just want to find it on Google, then you can subscribe to my newsletter. I send out postcards from all over the world. I send out stories, short snippets of videos. I'm in Dallas right now, so a lot of what I'm sharing pertains to my travels, but also layering those onto what's happening here in the current climate of the United States. The actual name of my newsletter on Substack is called With Gusto. So if you
Okay.
type that into the search bar, then it's an easy way to find me.
Okay, good. We'll put all this information in the show notes. So that is a wrap. So if you enjoyed this segment, feel free to add any comments, as we'd love to hear from you and we will respond. And if you'd like to receive future notifications of episodes, please click that subscribe button. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we both hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you for joining us.